At 67 years old, Walter Hensley stood in his small kitchen in Dayton, Ohio, sipping his morning coffee as sunlight filtered through the faded lace curtains. He'd worked as a truck mechanic for over 35 years, and though his hands were no longer as strong or steady as they once were, the pride he took in hard work had never faded. What had faded, however, was his bank account. Walter had just received another hospital bill, this one for the follow-up from a minor heart procedure. His Social Security barely covered rent and groceries, let alone unexpected expenses. He'd been widowed for 4 years, his wife Clara passing quietly in her sleep after battling cancer. The life insurance had mostly gone to medical bills. Their modest savings had been drained long ago, and now Walter was left with little more than the monthly checks from Social Security and a few household belongings he'd kept over the years. Walter wasn't alone. His story echoed that of millions of older Americans who had worked their whole lives, raised families, paid taxes, and yet found themselves unprepared for retirement. For years, he had pushed the thought of retirement savings aside, telling himself there would be time. But now, in his late 60s, the reality hit hard. One morning, while browsing a tablet his daughter Melissa had bought him, Walter stumbled upon a podcast hosted by a man named Greg Masterson, a financial advisor who spoke in plain terms for everyday folks. That particular episode was titled, "If you're 60 to 80 and have no retirement savings, here's what you can do." Something about it drew him in. Greg's voice crackled through the speaker. Even if you're 65, 70, or even 80 years old and don't have retirement savings, you still have options. You just have to take action. Let me share 5 steps that could change your life. Walter leaned in. That podcast marked the beginning of a personal transformation that would redefine Walter's later years and could serve as a blueprint for others like him. The first step Greg mentioned was shifting mindset. You have to let go of the guilt and panic, Greg said. You can't move forward if you're stuck blaming yourself. That resonated with Walter. He had spent countless nights regretting not saving more, not buying a house when he had the chance, not investing when his brother-in-law mentioned stocks back in the 90s. But those regrets weren't helping. That day, Walter sat down with a notebook and wrote in big letters, "Start today. No looking back." The second step was evaluating assets, not just bank accounts, but skills, possessions, and time. Greg encouraged listeners to make a list of anything that could earn or save money. Walter jotted down car repair, small tools in garage, old camera, Clara's sewing machine, and even extra room. It got him thinking. His garage, while dusty, still had usable equipment. His late wife's sewing machine had sat idle for years, but Walter knew how much Clara used to make from hemming, patching, and custom clothing. Maybe, just maybe, he could offer basic sewing services too, or rent the machine to someone else. The third step was downsizing and reducing expenses. Walter had been living in a rented 2-bedroom apartment. It was where he and Clara had shared their last 10 years together, and the memories made it hard to let go. But the rent had gone up again, and it was eating away at his limited income. He called Melissa and had a long, emotional conversation. She lived just a few miles away with her husband and 2 kids. Melissa suggested he move into their basement temporarily while they helped him sort things out. Though the idea of moving in with the kids bruised his pride, Walter knew it was the smart move. He swallowed his ego and said yes. Within a month, he had sold off excess furniture, packed his essentials, and moved in with Melissa. His Social Security income, now unburdened by rent and utility bills, could go toward food, transportation, and small investments. Step 4 in Greg's podcast was generating new income. Walter had always been good with his hands. With some encouragement from his grandson Ethan, who helped him post an ad on a local website, Walter began offering small engine repair services, lawn mowers, weed trimmers, snowblowers. He called it Walt's Handy Fix. Business trickled in slowly at first, mostly neighbors and referrals. But within a few months, he was averaging a few $100s extra each month. He also started volunteering at the local community center, helping teach basic repair skills to younger folks. That led to a modest part-time job offer to assist in teaching weekend workshops. Walter also found value in selling off collectibles and unused items. He had an old baseball card collection from the 1960s. With Ethan's help, they appraised the set and made nearly $1,800 selling select pieces online. That money went straight into a high-yield savings account, something Walter had never even considered before. The fifth step was investing in health and community. You can't build financial stability if you're constantly drained by medical costs and loneliness, Greg had said. Walter took that seriously. He signed up for Medicare Advantage and made sure he understood what it covered. Melissa helped him set up a calendar of doctor appointments, preventive care, and even fitness classes for seniors. Twice a week, he walked to the rec center for yoga and light aerobic sessions. He found himself smiling more, feeling energized, hopeful. Even better, Walter joined a local men's coffee group at the senior center. It was just a bunch of guys around his age, sharing stories, talking football, politics, and memories. But it brought connection, purpose, and a sense of belonging. As the months passed, Walter began to feel a profound shift. Though he wasn't living in luxury, he had peace of mind. He was no longer afraid to check his bank account or open the mailbox. He had systems in place, and he had a plan. Greg Masterson's 5 steps had saved his retirement, even though it came a bit later in life. One evening, Walter sat down with Ethan, now 16 and full of curiosity. "Grandpa," he asked, "do you ever wish you'd done things differently?" Walter looked out the window for a moment before replying.
Sure.
"I wish I'd started saving earlier. I wish I'd paid more attention when people talked about retirement. But I also know this. Life doesn't stop teaching you just because you turn 60. You can still learn, still grow. And most of all, you can still take care of yourself and others. I might have started late, but I'm finishing strong." Ethan nodded, scribbling in his notebook. He was working on a school project about family wisdom. Walter smiled, knowing he was leaving more than just advice. He was leaving an example. By the time Walter turned 70, his small repair business was running smoothly. He'd moved into a senior co-op housing facility where the rent was affordable, the environment social, and the responsibilities shared. He still spent weekends with Melissa's family, still hosted barbecues in the summer, and still mentored young people at the community center. His savings had grown, not huge, but enough for emergencies. He even took a weekend trip to Nashville with a men's group, something he never thought he'd afford again. And the best part? Walter no longer saw himself as behind in life. Instead, he saw himself as someone who refused to give up, someone who built something meaningful out of limited means. He had secured his future, not through luck, but